You're about to unlock what 90% of guys will never figure out about quitting. I spent 3 years studying the neuroscience behind this, analyzing case studies from top performance coaches and testing methods on myself and dozens of other men. And what I discovered will probably piss off the self-help industry. The reason you keep relapsing isn't because you lack willpower, it's because you've been fighting the wrong war entirely. Dr. Anna Lemke from Stanford's addiction medicine program discovered something that changes everything about how we approach this problem. But I'll get to that bombshell in a minute. But first, let me tell you about Marcus. 26 years old, software engineer. He'd been trying to quit for 4 years. He tried everything. Cold showers, meditation apps, blocking software. Nothing worked longer than a few weeks. Then he stumbled across what I'm about to share with you. That was 8 months ago, and he hasn't relapsed once. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to rewire your brain's reward system and build unshakable confidence that comes from true self-mastery. Drop a comment if you've ever felt like you're fighting an impossible battle, because what you're about to learn will flip that script completely. Here's the first thing everyone gets wrong. They think it's about removing something bad from their life. Wrong. You're completely rewiring a neural pathway that's been carved deeper than the Grand Canyon. Your brain doesn't understand the difference between hunting a mammoth and clicking on a screen. When you watch porn, your brain thinks you just hit the evolutionary jackpot. It's flooding your system with more dopamine than our ancestors got in months of actual success, and it's free, unlimited, available 24/7. Dr. Gary Wilson spent 15 years mapping these pathways. What he found was terrifying. The dopamine receptors in heavy porn users look identical to those of cocaine addicts. Your brain literally thinks it needs this stuff to survive. But here's where it gets interesting. The more you use, the less satisfaction you get. You need more extreme content, longer sessions, multiple tabs open, because your brain is chasing a high that keeps moving further away. I remember sitting in my apartment at 2 in the morning, surrounded by empty energy drink cans. I'd been researching for 3 hours straight. When I finally closed my laptop, I felt hollow, disgusted, and I knew I'd probably do it again tomorrow. That's when I realized this isn't about moral failure. This is about understanding your enemy. Take a screenshot of this next part. The secret isn't removing dopamine, it's redirecting it. Every urge is your brain saying, I need a reward. The question is, what kind of reward are you going to give it? Marcus figured this out by accident. Instead of fighting the urge, he started going to the gym. 3 weeks later, he was getting looks from women he'd never noticed before. The urges didn't disappear. They got redirected into something that actually improved his life. And speaking of improving lives, I think this is the best time for you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future videos, because every video uploaded is designed to help improve your life and make you a better man. But here's the brutal truth nobody talks about. You're not addicted to porn. You're addicted to being the kind of person who watches porn. Understanding this difference is everything. Most guys say, I need to stop watching porn, and white knuckle it for weeks. But they still see themselves as someone who watches porn. Someone who's just temporarily abstaining. The identity never changes. James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits. Every action is a vote for who you want to become. When you choose not to watch porn, you're casting a vote for being someone who doesn't need that shit to feel alive. The most successful guys I've worked with didn't focus on quitting porn. They focused on becoming someone else entirely. Someone who had better things to do. Someone too busy building something meaningful to waste time on pixels. I learned this the hard way. My first attempts were miserable because I was constantly thinking about what I couldn't do, how long it had been since my last relapse. My entire mental real estate was occupied by this thing I was supposedly trying to quit. Then I met David, former investment banker who'd struggled for over a decade. He tried everything, therapy, support groups, hypnosis, but nothing worked until he stopped trying to quit porn and started trying to become an entrepreneur. He launched 3 failed businesses in 2 years, but somewhere along the way, he stopped caring about porn because he was too obsessed with building something that mattered. You don't quit porn by focusing on porn. You quit by becoming obsessed with something bigger than yourself. Here's what changed everything for me. I wasn't watching porn because I was horny. I was watching porn because I was empty. Sexual urges come and go naturally, but emotional voids, those are bottomless. This is why guys can have great sex lives and still struggle with porn addiction. The porn isn't about sex, it's about avoiding feelings you don't want to feel. For me, it was loneliness, the deeper kind where you're surrounded by people but feel fundamentally disconnected. Porn was my anesthetic. It numbed the loneliness for a few minutes, but like any anesthetic, the more you use it, the more you need. You can't think your way out of an emotional problem. At some point, you have to stop running and face whatever you've been avoiding. I remember lying in bed at 3 in the morning, feeling that familiar restlessness, but instead of reaching for my phone, I just lay there and let myself feel lonely, really feel it. The ache in my chest, the heaviness in my stomach. It was awful, but it was liberating. For the first time, I wasn't running from myself. The feeling peaked, hung around, then started to fade on its own. I didn't need to do anything. I just needed to stop feeding it with resistance. And here's where that bombshell I promised from Dr. Lemke's research comes in. She discovered that our brains are designed to maintain balance through something called opponent processes. Every time you get a dopamine spike, your brain immediately creates an equal and opposite reaction to bring you back to baseline. The problem? That opposite reaction, the crash, the emptiness, the craving, lasts much longer than the original high. This means every time you watch porn, you're not just borrowing pleasure from the future, you're creating a deeper hole of dissatisfaction that demands to be filled. This is why sitting with the discomfort instead of numbing it is so crucial. You're breaking that opponent process cycle. And here's the framework I built that's worked for hundreds of guys. I call it the 3-pillar system. Pillar 1, environmental design. Your environment is stronger than your willpower. The guys who succeed make it physically impossible to fail, not just mentally challenging. Your phone doesn't live in your bedroom. Your laptop doesn't go where you relax. You create friction between yourself and the trigger. But here's the professional move. You don't just remove bad stimuli, you flood your environment with good ones. Books instead of screens, weights instead of couches, people instead of isolation. Pillar 2, energy management. Most relapses happen when you're bored, angry, lonely, or tired. When your prefrontal cortex is depleted, your primitive brain takes over. This means you need specific systems for each state, decided when you're clear-headed, not when you're triggered. Pillar 3, purpose magnetism. You need something so compelling that porn becomes boring by comparison. Not just a goal, an obsession. Something that makes you jump out of bed because you can't wait to get back to work on it. For Marcus, it was building his body. For David, building his business. For me, mastering influence and attraction. The specific thing doesn't matter. What matters is that it's bigger than you and demands growth. 6 months later, everything had changed. Not just the porn thing, everything. I was dating a woman I actually respected, building a business that excited me, having conversations that mattered, feeling more alive than I had in years. But here's the crazy part. I stopped thinking about porn completely. Not because of superhuman discipline, but because I had genuinely become someone who didn't need it anymore. Someone who had better things to do with his energy. That's the real goal. Not to become someone who doesn't watch porn, but someone who has no interest in it because your real life is too engaging, too meaningful, too full of genuine connection and purpose. The guys who succeed long term don't talk about streak numbers. They talk about the businesses they're building, the relationships they're developing, the impact they're having. Porn becomes irrelevant because they're obsessed with something bigger, but you have a choice to make. Keep fighting urges with the same broken strategies, or commit to becoming someone entirely different, someone who has bigger problems to solve and better things to build. You don't beat this thing by becoming strong enough to resist temptation forever. You beat it by becoming someone temptation can't touch. Watch this video next and hit subscribe for more videos like this. I'll see you there.